You want to know what betrayal really looks like? Picture this: your own flesh and blood, the child you carried for 9 months, the baby you held through countless sleepless nights, standing before a crowd of people in a white gown worth more than your monthly rent, telling everyone that some people don't belong there. And those eyes, those cold, calculating eyes that once looked at you with pure love, they're staring right at you when she says it. I'm talking about my daughter's wedding day. The day I thought would finally heal the wounds between us. The day I believed we could start over. But instead, it became the day she tried to bury me alive in front of everyone who mattered to her. Let me take you back to that morning, because you need to understand how much hope I had packed into that day. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror at 5 in the morning, hands shaking as I tried to apply mascara that cost me $20. $20 I didn't have, but I wanted to look perfect for her special day. My silver hair, which she'd criticized so many times for making me look old, was styled at a salon I couldn't afford. The lavender dress hanging on my closet door had been my splurge, bought with money I should have used for groceries. And that quilt. Oh God, that quilt. Do you know how many nights I sat up stitching that thing? How many times I pricked my fingers until they bled, working by lamplight because I couldn't afford to run the electricity longer. Each square was a memory: fabric from her baby clothes, pieces of my wedding dress, scraps from Halloween costumes I'd sewn when money was too tight for store-bought. Every stitch was an apology, a plea, a desperate attempt to show her that despite everything that had gone wrong between us, my love for her was woven into every fiber. I whispered to my reflection that morning, practicing what I'd say when she saw me. Today my daughter will see me again. Not the bitter, tired woman she'd grown to resent. Not the mother who worked double shifts and came home exhausted. Not the widow who'd been drowning in grief and bills since her father died. Just me, her mother, ready to try again. But the universe had other plans, didn't it? I arrived at the church 45 minutes early, clutching that quilt like it was my lifeline. I'd imagined walking down the aisle to the front pew, taking my rightful place as the mother of the bride. I'd fantasized about the moment she'd see me there, about the smile that would break across her face, about how she'd realize that I'd cleaned up nice, that I could still be the mother she needed me to be. Instead, a 19-year-old usher in an ill-fitting tuxedo looked at his clipboard and said, "You must be Sandra. Table 12, back corner." Not Mrs. Williams. Not the bride's mother. Just Sandra. Like I was some distant relative they'd invited out of obligation. I wanted to correct him. I wanted to say, I think there's been a mistake. I'm her mother. But the words died in my throat because I could see it in his eyes. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. My daughter, my own daughter, had relegated me to the shadows of her most important day. I sat in that back corner pew and watched as the groom's family filled the front rows. His mother, draped in designer navy, received hugs and compliments from everyone who passed. His father, distinguished in his perfectly tailored suit, shook hands and laughed heartily with the other guests. And there I was, invisible, forgotten, watching the life my daughter had built without me unfold before my eyes. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll give her that. She looked radiant walking down that aisle, every inch the princess she'd always dreamed of being. But when the officiant asked who gave this woman to be married, there was only silence from my corner. Her stepfather, her mother's new husband who'd been in her life for 3 whole years, stood and said, "Her family, and I do." Her family. Not me. I wasn't family anymore. I cried through the whole ceremony, but they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of mourning. I was mourning the relationship we'd never have, the mother I'd never get to be, the grandmother I might never become. I was mourning the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who made me breakfast in bed on Mother's Day with burnt toast and watery orange juice, who told me I was the most beautiful woman in the world. The reception was worse. So much worse. You know what it's like to be seated behind a pillar? To watch your daughter's wedding reception from behind a concrete barrier like you're some kind of threat to be hidden? I was surrounded by strangers. Distant cousins and college friends who didn't know who I was, didn't care that I was slowly dying inside just 20 feet away from where my daughter was celebrating the happiest day of her life. I watched the groom's parents give their toast, talking about how proud they were, how they'd loved my daughter from the moment their son brought her home. I watched my daughter's stepmother stand up and talk about the joy of watching this beautiful young woman blossom into the incredible person she is today. I watched friend after friend stand up and share memories and inside jokes and stories about this woman who shared my DNA, but felt like a complete stranger. And I waited. God help me, I waited for my turn. I had a speech prepared in my head. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Just a simple acknowledgement that I was proud of the woman she'd become, that despite our difficulties, I loved her unconditionally. I clutched that quilt in my lap and waited for someone to say, "And now let's hear from the bride's mother." But that invitation never came. Instead, my daughter stood up for her own speech. She was glowing, radiant, surrounded by love and laughter and everything I'd ever wanted for her. She thanked the groom's family for welcoming her. She thanked her friends for their support. She thanked her stepmother for her guidance. She thanked everyone except the woman who had given her life. And then she said it. Those words that will be burned into my brain until the day I die. True family isn't always blood. It's the ones who never disappoint you. The room erupted in applause, but I felt like I'd been shot. She wasn't done, though. Oh no, she was just getting started. Some people only bring negativity to your life, she continued, her voice growing stronger, more confident. Some people think they deserve a place at your table just because of genetics. But real family, chosen family, they earn their place through love and loyalty and being there when it matters. Every eye in that room turned to me. I could feel their judgment, their curiosity, their pity. I could see the groom's mother whispering something to the woman next to her. I could see my daughter's friends nodding in agreement, probably thinking about whatever version of our story she'd told them. Some people, my daughter said, looking directly at me now, should just leave. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I could feel the weight of 100 stares pressing down on me. I wanted to disappear, to evaporate, to cease existing entirely. But then something unexpected happened. The groom stood up. "Before anyone leaves," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife, "I have something to say." I'd barely spoken to this man. A few awkward conversations at family dinners I wasn't really invited to, a handshake at the engagement party where I'd felt completely out of place. I assumed he was about to escort me out, to finish what my daughter had started. Instead, he began to speak about me. "6 months ago," he said, "I did something that probably seems crazy to all of you. I hired a private investigator." The room shifted uncomfortably. My daughter's face went pale. "Not because I suspected anything," he continued, "but because I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand how the woman who raised the incredible person I fell in love with could be so absent from her life. It didn't make sense to me." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold onto the quilt. "Do you want to know what I found?" he asked, his voice growing stronger. "I found records of a woman who worked 3 jobs to keep her daughter in private school. I found hospital bills she couldn't afford, paid anyway because her daughter needed surgery. I found a woman who sold her mother's engagement ring, the only valuable thing she owned, to pay for her daughter's college tuition. Oh God. I'd never told anyone about the ring. My mother's ring, the one thing I had left of her, the one thing I'd planned to pass down to my daughter someday. But when the tuition bill came and I didn't have the money, I sold it without a second thought because her education mattered more than my sentimentality. I found a woman," the groom continued, "who took on massive debt to pay for her daughter's dental work, her daughter's car, her daughter's apartment deposit. I found a woman who never missed a single soccer game, even when she was working night shifts and hadn't slept in 36 hours. The room was dead silent now. I could see my daughter's face crumbling, the confidence from her speech evaporating. "And do you know what else I found?" he asked. I found a woman who, when her husband died suddenly and left her with nothing but debt and grief, never once asked her daughter to come home and help. Never once suggested she drop out of college. Never once made her feel guilty for living her life while her mother struggled alone. I was sobbing now, ugly crying in front of all these strangers, but I didn't care anymore. This man, this stranger, understood. He saw what my daughter had chosen to forget. I found a woman who attended every graduation, every birthday party, every important event, even when she wasn't really wanted there. Who sent gifts she couldn't afford and cards filled with love that were never acknowledged. Who showed up today with a handmade quilt that probably took her months to make, hoping for what? A smile? A thank you? A moment of recognition from the daughter she sacrificed everything for. My daughter was crying now too, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks. So when my bride talks about people who disappoint, the groom said, his voice growing hard, I think she's looking in the wrong direction. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wedding ring, the ring we'd exchanged just hours earlier. He set it down on the head table with a soft clink that echoed through the silent room. I cannot marry someone who treats her own mother this way, he said. I cannot build a life with someone who is capable of this level of cruelty to the person who loved her first and loved her most. The room exploded. Guests gasped, chairs scraped against the floor as people turned to each other in shock. My daughter collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Her stepmother rushed to her side, shooting daggers at the groom with her eyes. But I was already standing. My legs felt like jelly, but somehow I managed to get to my feet. I clutched that quilt to my chest and I walked. I walked past the head table where my daughter was falling apart. I walked past the groom who had just defended me in a way no one ever had. I walked past the tables full of shocked faces and whispered conversations. I walked out of that reception hall with my head held high for the first time in years. The cool night air hit my face like a blessing. I stood in the parking lot, breathing deeply, feeling something I hadn't felt in so long I'd almost forgotten what it was like. Dignity. My phone rang. My sister's name flashed on the screen. How's the wedding? She asked. I laughed. Actually laughed. It's over, I said. Over? But it's only 9 o'clock. For me, it's over. And you know what? I think that's exactly how it was supposed to be. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what happened? I told her everything. About the back row seat, about the speech, about the groom's incredible act of justice. When I finished, she was crying. Sandra, she said, tonight your dignity was defended by a stranger because your own daughter wouldn't do it. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of everything you sacrificed. And be proud that you raised someone who, despite everything, attracted a man with that kind of character. She was right. In the midst of all that pain, there was something to be proud of. I had raised a daughter who, for all her faults, had somehow found a man who valued loyalty and truth and standing up for what's right. Maybe some of what I'd taught her had gotten through after all. The next few days were hell. My phone rang constantly, my daughter calling, crying, begging me to talk to her. Her stepmother called, trying to smooth things over, suggesting we all just forget what happened and move on. Even some of the wedding guests called, wanting to know my side of the story, like this was some kind of entertainment for them. I ignored them all. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't trying to fix a relationship that was broken. I wasn't chasing after someone who didn't want me. I wasn't sacrificing my dignity for the slim hope of acceptance. 2 weeks later, my daughter showed up at my apartment. She looked terrible, thin, pale, dark circles under her eyes. She'd lost weight, and her hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. This wasn't the polished woman from the wedding. This was a broken girl. Mom, she said when I opened the door. Just that one word, and she started crying. I wanted to fold her into my arms. Every maternal instinct I had was screaming at me to comfort her, to tell her everything was okay, to make it all better the way I had when she was little and scraped her knee or had a nightmare. But I didn't. What do you want, Rachel? I asked. I want to apologize, she said. I want to explain. I want to make this right. I studied her face, looking for the sincerity I desperately wanted to see. Why no? Because I lost everything, she said. David won't take my calls. The wedding is ruined. Everyone at work is talking about it. I have no one left. And there it was. The truth. She wasn't there because she'd realized how badly she'd hurt me. She wasn't there because she'd had some great epiphany about my sacrifices or my love. She was there because she was alone and desperate, and I was her last resort. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I was sorry that her wedding had imploded. I was sorry that she'd lost the man who might have been the best thing that ever happened to her. I was sorry that she was in pain. But I wasn't sorry enough to let her use me again. I can't do this anymore, Rachel, I said. I can't be the person you turn to only when everyone else is gone. I can't be your emotional ATM, available whenever you need to make a withdrawal, but ignored when your account is full. But you're my mother, she said, like that should be enough. Yes, I said. I am. And, because I'm your mother, I'm going to do something I should have done years ago. I'm going to stop enabling this behavior. I closed the door. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but it was also one of the most necessary. 3 weeks after that, I got a call from David, the groom. Ex-groom, I guess. He asked if he could meet me for coffee. I almost said no, still raw from everything that had happened, but something in his voice made me agree. We met at a little cafe downtown, and he looked as rough as my daughter had. Tired, older somehow, like the events of the wedding had aged him. I wanted to thank you, he said. Thank me? For what? For showing me who she really was before it was too late. I stirred my coffee, not sure what to say. I'm sorry your wedding was ruined. I'm not, he said, and he sounded like he meant it. I'm sorry it took me so long to see the truth. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I'm sorry you had to endure years of that treatment. We talked for over an hour. He told me about a project he was involved with, a nonprofit organization that helped women who'd been marginalized, abandoned, or abused rebuild their lives and find their dignity again. He asked if I'd be interested in volunteering. For the first time in years, someone was offering me a chance to be valued not as Rachel's mother, or someone's wife, or the poor woman who lost her husband, but as myself. As Sandra. As someone with experience and wisdom and something to offer. I said yes. 6 months later, I was standing on a stage in front of 300 people. The local news cameras were rolling, journalists were taking notes, and I was telling my story. Not the sanitized version, not the version where I pretended everything was fine. The real version. The version where a mother's love wasn't enough, where sacrifice went unrecognized, where family could be the source of your deepest wounds. But also the version where you could rebuild. Where you could find your worth again. Where you could help other women who'd been where I'd been and show them that their stories didn't have to end in shadows and silence. The Women's Dignity Project had grown from a small support group to a thriving organization. We had job training programs, counseling services, legal aid, and emergency housing. We had women who'd gone from homeless to homeowners, from broken to brilliant, from invisible to influential. And I was running it. Me. The woman who'd been seated behind a pillar at her own daughter's wedding. The woman who'd been told she didn't belong. I was now the coordinator of an organization that was changing lives, and my own life had been transformed in the process. The cameras captured it all, the award ceremony, the speech I gave about second chances and self-worth, the moment when the mayor presented me with a key to the city for my work with marginalized women. The woman who'd once been humiliated in front of 100 wedding guests was now being honored in front of hundreds more. It was poetic justice, and it felt incredible. After the ceremony, I was standing outside the convention center, still a little stunned by everything that had happened, when I saw her. Rachel was standing by the parking lot, looking exactly like she had that day she'd shown up at my apartment. Thin, pale, uncertain. But there was something different in her eyes this time. something that looked like genuine remorse. "Mom," she said, approaching carefully like I might run away. "Rachel." "I saw the news coverage," she said. "I saw your speech. I saw what you've built." I waited, not giving her anything to work with. "I've been in therapy," she said, "for months now. Trying to understand why I treated you the way I did. Trying to understand where all that anger came from." "And what did you discover?" She was quiet for a long moment, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I discovered that I was angry at you for being human, for grieving when Dad died, for struggling financially, for not being perfect. I was angry that you couldn't fix everything and make it all okay the way you did when I was little. This was different. This wasn't the desperate, self-serving apology from before. This felt real. I was angry that you reminded me of everything I was afraid of becoming," she continued. "Struggling, alone, forgotten. So I pushed you away and told myself you were the problem. I convinced myself that you were holding me back, that you were the reason I couldn't be happy. And now I know that I was the problem. I know that I threw away the most important relationship in my life because I was too proud and too scared to admit that I needed you. I know that I humiliated and hurt the person who loved me most in this world, and I don't know if I can ever forgive myself for that." She was sobbing now, the kind of deep, wrenching sobs that come from the very core of your being. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "I don't expect you to want me in your life. I just needed you to know that I finally understand. I finally see what I did, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked at this broken woman who was my daughter, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not hope that everything would go back to the way it was. That was impossible. But hope that maybe we could build something new. Something real. Something based on mutual respect instead of obligation. "If you want me in your life," I said slowly, "you'll have to earn it. My love is no longer something you can take for granted or abuse. It's no longer a given just because we share DNA." She nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand like a little girl. "I no longer need your approval to feel whole," I continued. "I no longer need your acceptance to know my worth. I've built a life without you, and it's a good life. If we're going to rebuild our relationship, it will be slow, and it will be on my terms. And the first sign that you're falling back into old patterns, I'm out. Do you understand?" "Yes," she whispered. "I understand." "Good," I said. "Then maybe we can start with coffee. Next week. You can tell me about therapy, and I'll tell you about the work I'm doing. We'll see how it goes." Her face lit up with the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in years. "Really? Really? But Rachel." "Yes. We're starting from scratch. You don't get to be my daughter just because you were born to me. You have to earn that title back. And I don't get to be your mother just because I gave birth to you. I have to earn that back too." She nodded, understanding. "I'd like that," she said. "I'd like to earn it back." As I drove home that night, I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. The wedding from hell, the humiliation, the rejection, the slow rebuilding of my self-worth, the work I'd found, the women I'd helped, the life I'd built from the ashes of the old one. Sometimes rejection is the doorway to rebirth. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most are the ones who teach you to love yourself first. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing that happens to you. I'd spent years trying to be the mother my daughter wanted, trying to earn her love and approval, trying to make myself smaller and quieter and less demanding so she'd let me stay in her life. I'd sacrificed my dignity, my self-respect, and my own needs in pursuit of a relationship that was built on inequality and resentment. But that night, driving home from the awards ceremony where I'd been honored for my work, where I'd been recognized as a leader and a change maker, where I'd been seen and valued and celebrated, I realized something profound. I didn't need her anymore. I wanted a relationship with her if it could be healthy and mutual and respectful. But I didn't need her validation to feel worthy. I didn't need her approval to feel valuable. I didn't need her presence to feel complete. For the first time in my adult life, I was enough. Just me. Just Sandra. Not Sandra the mother, not Sandra the widow, not Sandra the woman trying desperately to be loved. Just Sandra, standing on her own, building her own life, making her own impact. And you know what? It felt incredible. The quilt I'd made for her wedding was still sitting in my closet, wrapped in tissue paper. Sometimes I'd take it out and look at it, remembering all those late nights stitching pieces of our shared history together. It was beautiful, really. Some of my best work. I decided to donate it to a women's shelter. Some woman who'd lost everything would wrap herself in that quilt and feel loved, valued, cared for. She'd appreciate the work that went into it, the thought behind each carefully chosen piece of fabric. She'd understand that love was stitched into every square. It would go to someone who deserved it. Someone who would treasure it. Someone who wouldn't take it for granted. Just like my love had found its way to people who deserved it. Women in crisis who needed someone to believe in them. Survivors who needed someone to show them they were worth fighting for. Daughters who needed to learn how to value their mothers. Mothers who needed to learn how to value themselves. My love had found its proper home at last. Not in the ungrateful hands of someone who'd inherited it, but in the appreciative hearts of people who'd earned it. And that, I realized, was exactly where it belonged.